Hi, this is Coach John, and this is an introduction to the French advanced variation. So first, this is the French defense, D4, D5. All right. Now, a common thing that kids will encounter in playing the French defense will be the advanced variation, which is what I recommend for my students, especially below 1,000 to play. This is real simple, clear cut stuff. So now, what happens is black tries to attack the base of the pawn chain. And this opening kind of teaches you about pawn chains and attacking the base. So there's like a lesson for the positional chess as well in this. So then you protect it with c3, and now you see you have a long pawn chain. And if black would try to attack this pawn on b2 because that's now the base of it, but it's more difficult than you would think. All right, so knight c6 to attack d4. And once again, if d4 falls, then e5 will be vulnerable. So white never wants to do a move like that. That would be like a really bad move, because this guy now is falling and this guy's going to die anyways. So now queen to b6, and once again, we're attacking here. And we might actually take here on b2. A lot of players below 1,000 will just develop their bishop. Like, oh, let me protect this pawn here. And now we take like this, and that's pretty silly. Just dropping a pawn for free. So bishop to d3, and this has a really poisonous attack. Basically, from this, you have the ideas of the Greco-Roman sacrifice, which I'll go into in a more advanced variation. Now, after bishop to d3, it looks like white loses a pawn. Takes, takes, queen takes, but the opponent's not thinking one move ahead, and bishop to b5 check. So this is what you're hoping for as white. As black, if you were to play the French defense, you should never fall for this. This is kind of like the basic little trick in the French defense. And actually, one of my students who kind of chose to do the French by himself, and he played this in a tournament, and then he had this happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why you only do the openings that I tell you to do. So the move here to stop all that is bishop to d7. So after bishop to d3, you do bishop to d7. And this is kind of uncommon for players because basically you're developing all your queenside stuff first. So after castles, takes, knight takes, queen takes, and now you can take this. Now you're free and clear. And you won this pawn. So white doesn't really want to do that. They probably should play a different move here at this point. And when we consult the database, we see, castles is a move. If bishop is c2, to get out of the way, you take, and now knight to b4 is a great advantage for black. So going back to it here, castles, takes, knight takes, queen takes. And here, this is not the best line for white. I don't like this at all. Black is up a pawn. And, basically white might try to play knight to b5 on the next move. So black could play a6. And black has to make sure their king doesn't get trapped in the center. And after queen to here, maybe black's going to try. Maybe, okay, so knight to e7. And here white might want to play f4. So they play maybe king h1. White relocates his knight. Notice this maneuver. Knight to e7, knight back to c6. And then f4. And here, black is up the pawn still. So I think black is doing pretty good in this position. Let's see if white has any more options. So after takes, and here, he's, let's look, bishop d7. Now white can at this point, maybe is where white should consider playing. Instead of castles, knight, pawn takes pawn on c5. And then black plays this, so they get something out of the position now. Now this guy is isolated, and they develop their bishop. So maybe they play a5 to stop b4. All right, so this is kind of an introduction here to this, and let me finish it with the first game ever recorded in the French defense history. e6, d4, d5, e5, the advanced variation, c5, c3, takes, bishop to b4. Now this was Greco from Europe, in Italy basically. Knight c3, takes, knight c6, bishop d3, preparing some sort of sacrifices maybe, knight g e7, pawn f4, knight f5, knight f3, castles, g4. This is a super aggressive line. Knight to h4, you don't take, of course, because then queen check, but instead you castle. Now he takes you, queen takes, bishop d7, queen h3, preparing to checkmate, g6, f5, takes, pawn takes, mistake, rook takes, boom, bishop takes, and it's game over. And white wins very simply. So this is an example of how not to play as black, basically, and how to play as white. You need to realize these threats that will come later on the h7 square. And the advanced variation, because the pawn is on e5, the knight can't go to f7, which then makes this h7 square very weak. All right, don't want to overwhelm you too much. This is Coach John, and this is an introduction to the French defense advanced variation. Take care.